You're looking at one of the top beaches in the world, Flamenco. A spot popular with tourists and a piece of paradise that generations of Puerto Ricans have called home.
Oye, Flamenco es mi amor.
But there was a time that the people who were born here could not come to this beach because the United States military took it over and forced the residents out. The people of Culebra fought back and won access to their natural resources again. But almost 4 decades after that victory, there's another threat.
La amenaza presente son los grandes desarrolladores.
And they're ready to fight again.
De aquí somos, de aquí nos quedamos, no nos vamos para ningún lado.
Culebra is an island only 7 miles long and 2 miles wide, but a strategic location in the Caribbean. Year-round warm weather and beautiful landscapes have made it a magnet for outside interests. So much that the United States wanted to buy it from Spain in the 1860s. That didn't work out, but then the US took possession of Puerto Rico, and within a few years the Navy was training in Culebra. By the time Lourdes Feliciano was in middle school, US Navy bombings were a part of daily life.
Había mucho miedo, o sea, cada vez que explotaba una bomba, toda la escuela vibraba.
Culebrenses still remember the effects of the Navy's presence on their island. Accidents like the one that resulted in Don Isaac Espinosa losing an arm and an eye, families forced out of their homes to make space for the military, and access denied to spaces that used to be public, like Flamenco Beach.
No podíamos disfrutar de flamenco porque ellos eran dueños y señores de la playa, o sea, el que pasara flamenco era arrestado o era sacado a la fuerza de las áreas.
By the 1970s, the people of Culebra had had enough. They marched, they committed civil disobedience, and their mayor, Ramon Feliciano, known as Monching, went to Washington, D.C. and found a lawyer willing to sue the Navy. Don Monching was also Lourdes' dad.
La victoria costó mucho, muchas lágrimas y muchas vicisitudes, ¿verdad?
They won, and in 1975, the Navy left Culebra. The people had access to their beach again. Today, you can still see the war tanks the Navy left behind in Flamenco. On the eastern side of Flamenco, there's an area known as El Muellecito. After the Navy left, it became a favorite spot for the community to get together and celebrate special occasions.
Yo aprendí a nadar en el Muellecito.
That was until a company bought the land that gave the locals access to the beach and argued that path was part of their private property. The company was Puerto Rico Land and Fruit, whose principal partner was Victor Gonzalez Barahona. He's also the president of Windmar Renewable Energy, a company that sells solar panels in Puerto Rico. After the company bought the land, they built a concrete fence that closed off the path. And once again, the community fought back. Even Monching, the mayor who sued the Navy, was there again, this time confronting Gonzalez.
Lo que nos importa es que por aquí el pueblo de Culebra quiere seguir pasando libremente noche y día con nuestros adultos, nuestros niños y con toda la comunidad.
The case ended up in court, and Gonzalez eventually took down the wall. But his issues with the community didn't end there. Gonzalez built a property in front of Flamenco Beach that he rents short-term on Airbnb for more than $3,600 a reservation.
No debió haberse construido esa estructura en ese sitio.
Edwin Hernandez Delgado is a marine biologist who has been studying Culebra's underwater ecosystems for more than 30 years. He says deforestation and development without proper controls is harming critical habitats of endangered species.
Y el problema es que se están aprobando una serie de proyectos en áreas sumamente sensitivas donde lo que quiera que hagas, no importa ser la playa o ser la montaña, instantáneamente, después de un aguacero fuerte, tiene un impacto en la costa.
Culebrenses documented bulldozers clearing paths on Gonzalez's property in 2017, and the crystal clear water of El Muellecito turned brown. González didn't respond to requests to interview him for this story.
O sea, la escorrentía siempre va a haber, pero si hubiese vegetación, la cantidad de sedimento fino que correría hacia la laguna sería ínfima, porque estaría cubierto de vegetación. Y en términos entonces de los sistemas costeros, pues lo que tiene es un aguacero de sedimento llegando a la costa.
So what does it matter? Well, when sediment ends up in the water, it smothers the coral reefs, potentially bringing pollution and disease. And the reefs are important because they protect the coast from waves, storms, and floods. They're also home to the fish that culebrenses eat. And corals have the important function of absorbing CO2 from the atmosphere. Not to mention their beauty attracts people from all over the world to Culebra.
A pesar de todo eso que hemos conversado, la isla de Culebra es uno de los lugares que todavía sostiene uno de los arrecifes en mejor desarrollo de Puerto Rico. Así de grave es la situación en la Isla Grande. O sea, nosotros tenemos diversidad y unos paisajes submarinos que yo considero todavía épicos. Estamos tratando de matar la gallina de los huevos de oro. Continuamos con un patrón de desarrollo que no es sostenible.
There's one particular tool that is being used to fast-track developments. It's called categorical exclusion. And when it's approved, proponents can skip having to do a detailed evaluation of a project's environmental impact. It's the mechanism that was used to fast-track the construction of a pool in the town of Rincon. That was the case where an endangered turtle was found nesting in the construction site back in July, and that led to protests and confrontations. On one side were environmentalists and activists who believed the construction was too close to the ocean. On the other side were the owners of the condos who claimed they had permission to build on that piece of land because they argue it's part of their private property. Ultimately, the government agency in charge of planning in Puerto Rico decided to take back the permit because they believe it was issued illegally. See, categorical exclusions are meant for actions that are routine and in places where it can be predicted they won't have a significant effect on the environment. And that's why, according to the government's own rules, categorical exclusions for construction or reconstruction projects are not supposed to be approved in areas that are at risk of flooding, areas that are ecologically sensitive, areas where there are endangered plants or animals, or areas where ecological systems could be affected. And the area where the pool in Rincon was being built checked off at least 2 of those, according to the Puerto Rico Planning Board. But again, it was approved anyway. So the question I had was, is this happening in other parts of Puerto Rico? Are categorical exclusions being approved where they shouldn't be? So I requested the information from the government, and Alfredo Montañez Acuña, a graduate student of planning at the University of Puerto Rico, analyzed it. This is what he found in Culebra. The government approved more than 250 categorical exclusions in the island of Culebra in the last 8 years, or 95% of the requests they received. According to Alfredo's analysis, at least 30 of those could be illegal because they were for construction or reconstruction projects approved in places that fell in at least one of the 4 categories, while 12 were approved in areas that had at least 2 out of the 4, just like the case in Rincon.
Si hay algún municipio que esto no debería estar sucediendo, es Culebra, por lo especial que es, por su historia, por su valor ecológico y por la alta dependencia de la comunidad de tener playa y arrecifes saludables, una calidad de agua adecuada.
Alfredo says the data validated what the community had already been observing and documenting.
Pudiésemos esperar un colapso de los arrecifes de 10 a 30 años si seguimos como vamos. So, mi llamado es, aquí están los datos. Gracias. Tuvimos acceso a ellos, pudimos presentarlos, pudimos analizarlos rápidamente para dejarles saber, hey, aquí hay un posible impacto ambiental significativo a largo plazo que se puede evitar.
And the thing is that Culebra has a one-of-a-kind tool to avoid environmental damage. It's the only municipality in Puerto Rico with its own Conservation and Development Authority, commonly known as ACDIC. because after the Navy left Culebra, the government admitted the island had special characteristics and needed additional protection.
Es la herramienta que nosotros tenemos como municipio para que no se desarrolle desmedidamente.
ACDEC is made up of the mayor and 4 other members with special powers to protect Culebra's environment, but that's on paper.
Se convirtió en una ley muerta, como ha pasado con muchas leyes en Puerto Rico, que hay leyes que no las ejercen.
In fact, the Puerto Rican government is not supposed to approve projects in Culebra without ACDEC's endorsement. But the mayor says it's happening anyway.
La ley existe, pero esa ley se está violando.
Es correcto.
I reached out to the agency in charge of approving permits in Puerto Rico. They were the ones who provided the data, but they did not respond to my questions regarding the categorical exclusions approved in Culebra. And at the heart of this debate is also a question about what kind of island Culebra should be. A vacation destination where tourism is prioritized, or a town with a strong local community that welcomes visitors? The answer to that question will determine if Culebra's natural resources are protected for future generations. It will also determine if the needs of the local population, like education and housing, are met. Because just like in other parts of Puerto Rico, right now short-term rentals are taking over. What used to be housing options for culebrenses have been turned into Airbnbs, and some locals say they're being displaced.
No se sienten desplazados, están siendo desplazados. Esa es la palabra correcta.
La gente no tiene dónde quedarse. Gente de aquí, gente que su familia son de aquí.
Jan Lebron's family has been in Culebra for several generations.
Mi tatarabuela llevada de aquí, traída por los españoles, Felipa Serrano.
Felipa Serrano was a woman born into slavery who became Culebra's midwife after gaining her freedom. And 6 generations later, Jan was born. Now he can't find a place to live that he can afford, and he doesn't want to have to leave.
¿Cómo yo me voy a ir de donde yo nací? Donde mi familia se ha criado, se ha esforzado, ¿entiendes?
Jan works with an organization dedicated to conserving corals. He says he wants to live in a Culebra that puts nature and its people first.
Ahora mismo ves a San Tomás, San Martín, todas estas islas vírgenes cercanas, que son familiares también, tenemos familias acá y allá de ellos. Son comercializadas, tan pronto tú te bajas de ahí, llegas al puerto, son comercializadas, de pies a cabeza, digamos. Eso es lo que no queremos, queremos dejarlo de la manera verde más posible.
Qué bandolero es.
And I can tell you that one of the things that is so beautiful about spending time in Culebra with the locals is how everyone knows each other. And I mean really know each other. It's such a small community that they talk about other culebrenses like their family. They don't want to lose that.
Todos estos grandes intereses pues vienen con el fin de aumentar su riqueza. Culebra para nosotros es más que una riqueza económica en nuestra vida, en nuestro diario vivir. Y no le vamos a permitir, si ellos piensan que van a aumentar su riqueza a cuenta de desplazarnos y sacarnos y ellos quedarse, no va a ser así. Si hay que volver a los tiempos de pelea, pues regresaremos a lo mismo.
I cannot end this video without thanking every single person who made this story possible. This investigation was entirely crowdfunded, and it just wouldn't have been possible without the more than 300 people who joined this effort. It makes me really happy to say this is our story. So what's next? We want to expand this investigation throughout Puerto Rico. We want to ask the same questions we asked in Culebra and other municipalities. So we're gonna leave the crowdfunding open, and I'll post a link to that in the description in case you wanna support us moving forward. Last time I also told you we're working on a database and a map where you can see what has been approved throughout Puerto Rico. We're working on that, and that's coming soon. So again, thank you, and stay tuned for the next video.